Have you ever seen a normally calm person completely lose their SHUUUTT? What happened?
One of my teachers in high school was the calmest dude. Never yelled, never told kids off, would just laugh and smile and wait for us all to calm down and then continue with his teaching. One day we must have been particularly rowdy, and we weren't calming down like we usually did. He couldn't get a word in edgeways. I could see him getting increasingly frustrated, and eventually he just bellowed SHUUUTTUPPPP, and the entire class was shocked into silence. He never had to do it again, lmao.
It takes a lot to make my mom yell. On the rare occasion she did yell, it still felt like she had self-control. Like she yelled on purpose, because there was a reason to yell, like she needed to be that loud for us to hear us, or one of the kids needed to learn to never run into traffic again. But one morning when we were teenagers, my brother was being really difficult. And my very sweet, soft-spoken mother yelled "God damn it Sean" and threw a butter knife down so hard it stuck, a quarter-inch deep, in oak hardwood floor. Against the grain. I can still hear the noise it made. We were all very well behaved for the rest of the day. I did eventually ask my mom why she did that. Her explanation was that she felt she was too angry to hold a knife, even a butter knife, and was trying to get it out of her hand before she did something stupid.
I was chilling at a friend's house as a kid. His dad was the chillest, nicest guy. That day, my friend's mom, also super nice, was across the street talking to the neighbor about something that I can no longer recall. Neighbor was one of those guys who never respected common etiquette, music blaring, parking a shitty boat in front of other people's house, cars parked on the lawn. The neighbor started screaming at our mom, and we all went out on the stoop to see what was happening. As soon as we got outside, the guy called my friend's mom a cunt. Well, my friend's dad heard that and went full Hulk mode. He ran screaming across the street and just fucking decked the guy and crouched over him shouting warnings and threats. Took a while for his wife to calm him down. I don't think any of them had ever seen him react to something in that way, maybe even the dad himself.
I worked as a line cook with a chef who I became really good friends with. Really chill dude, easygoing, and actually super fun to cook with. He taught me most of what I know about cooking, and I owe him a lot for my success. Never really saw him get mad until one day, we were getting slammed during busy night and one of the servers said something that really ticked him off, not sure if I ever heard what it was, but next thing I knew he had sent the deep fryer basket flying at Mach 1 across the kitchen, nearly missing the dish kid and shattering a light bulb. He stormed off, and 5 minutes later, after a smoke break, came back and casually continued cooking as if nothing had happened. He apologized about it the next day, and we never talked about it again. The restaurant industry is a stressful place.
When I was in my late teens, I was financially irresponsible and borrowed money from my grandparents to move out of my mom's house. We made a plan on how I would pay it back in installments, and I only missed 2 payments. With each one, I called my granddad and asked if it was okay. He was always cool about it. One day, I got a call from him and he was livid, screaming at me on the phone, and I could hear my grandmother crying in the background. He was the angriest I've ever heard anyone in my life, and I was terrified. He wanted to know why I hadn't made the payment that month, but I was sure I had. It turns out I had accidentally set the automated payment to be drawn from the wrong account and it hadn't done it. It was an honest mistake on my part, and I explained that to him. I transferred the money immediately, and he instantly calmed down. I later found out he had become an alcoholic after he quit smoking, and he would talk to my grandmother like that regularly when no one was around.
I used to see this woman in my building every day. Very friendly. We always checked on each other's lives. We had lunch a few times over the years. It was friendly to a certain degree. A couple years passed. She was much older than me. One day, riding the elevator, she told me that she was saying goodbye. I said I was sorry to see her go and asked why. She said she was retiring that day. I asked if her office was throwing a party or if she was celebrated. She turned to me and her face contorted into an image of rage. She clenched her teeth and said she didn't tell anyone in her office, including her bosses. She only told the HR person last week. This was her last day, and she was never returning to see or talk to anyone in her office again.
I had a friend who was in his 60s, a functioning alcoholic, but he was the most calm and composed guy I have ever known. He never used to raise his voice or swear. Everything was done with meticulous precision. He once explained to me that if you use vulgar language and shout all the time, then you will have nowhere to go when you really do get angry. I had worked with him for about 3 years, never heard him raise his voice or swear before. The week before he had been shafted on his pay and the manager promised to get it sorted by Friday. Friday rolled around and it had not been sorted. So when my friend walked up to the manager in the open office and declared loudly, "Where the fuck is my money? You promised this would be resolved." The whole office went silent and the look of dread on the manager's face was haunting. The money was in his account by the end of the day. That was him losing his shit. Edit spelling.
I used to do seasonal work sorting tax returns. Like, 500 people in a warehouse-size room sorting through returns, stacking them in boxes, etc. This one guy on my team, huge dude, a gentle giant, really nice. Suddenly one day he smashes the table he's working at, then flips a big box full of paperwork. It flew over my head and 20 feet away. He threw the table out of his way, then stormed out. Turns out he was getting his paycheck garnished for something or other.
I had a master sergeant at one of my units in the army. Dude was half asleep most of the time. I don't think I ever heard him talk more than once. One day all the guys get called into the large classroom and he's in there looking upset. He launches into a rant about how easy it is to pee into the toilet instead of on the ground in front of it. Dude was passionate about where people pissed. Drew a stick figure diagram all angrily showing how you use one hand to stabilize and aim the pre into the toilet. I had to keep from laughing because he seemed like he was about to blow his lid.
My husband. FYI, he works in a very hands-on clinic and has to be super calm and steady because he's poking needles in the joints, elbows and knees of squeamish patients all day. I was brought into emergency because my labor wasn't progressing, I was running a fever and baby was in distress. He knew an emergency C-section was the only way, but these two maternity nurses were just calmly chatting over my writing form like it's tea time. He very calmly asked them twice to call for the anesthetist and get things going. But they knew he's always gentle and just nodded along without moving. More chatting. I was half stoned when I witnessed this. He slammed both palms on the side of the stretcher and said, "Is no one listening? Get the consultant in here." I was very proud of him that day. Grinning, squinting face.
Mechanic I worked with is getting verbally abused by a customer, claiming he ripped him off. Guy's going off saying all sorts of racist shit, then stepped up like he was gonna swing. Henry beat him to the punch, literally. Then he calmly walked to the back office and called the cops on himself.
My math teacher in middle school. He would even brag about not being angry, and how it was a useless emotion. One day this kid pissed him off so bad he swiped all of the kids' shit off of the table in front of the whole class and kicked him out.
My 5th grade teacher was a very calm and collected individual, except one time when a kid said her mother was a whore. She lost it, she was screaming about disrespect and stuff and even called her mom, put her on speaker and asked if she was a whore. In front of the whole class. I miss her, LMAO.
My first semester in college I was in a math class with a horrible teacher, the entire class hated him. The girl that sat in front of me was very sweet and soft-spoken. One day, I don't remember what set her off, but she just snapped and started screaming at him. It caused such a commotion that someone called security to check if everything was okay. The teacher quickly dismissed security and went back to teaching like nothing had happened.
One time in high school, a couple bullies were up in this other kid's face. Dude was just sitting there like Anton Chigurh or Private Pile, no expression and staring straight ahead, clearly not hearing a thing. One of the bullies inched closer, and the kid decked him as hard as he could in the face. The bully was knocked to the floor, speechless with his nose bleeding everywhere. The kid then calmly stood up, still with no emotion, calmly packed his things, and made his own way to the principal's office as if nothing at all had happened. It's still one of the most brutal things I've ever seen. It was like right out of a movie.
Quit the job on the spot. He went out of the office showing the finger to everyone and telling us to go fuck ourselves. Nice dude. I miss him.
One of my coworkers is a really calm, quiet, easygoing dude. We had a receptionist at the time who was terrible. Would constantly leave the front desk phones unattended. We would have to stop mid-service to answer them ourselves and check people in and out. One day, she pulls her same bullshit. The phones are ringing, people waiting, and she's nowhere to be seen. He just does a big sigh and screams her name in the loudest, angriest, most fed up "I'm fucking done" scream. She scurried her trifling little ass back up to the front in seconds, like a little cockroach that knew it fucked up.
Opposite story, but I've seen a very reactive person become completely calm. And that's when I realize things are very bad. My father is very reactive and agitated easily. Doesn't take much to set him off. When our country was going through war, there was a city that had a big strategic importance. In my age, he participated in liberating it. In 2020, I remember the night we lost that city. I never seen my father so quiet and calm in my life. And it actually sent chills down my spine more than seeing him agitated ever did. The part that made me scared was I expected him to absolutely lose his shit. Seeing him stressed and upset would bring some consistency to my view of him. But seeing him so quiet was so odd, it was scary.
This was probably about 12 years ago or so. My best friend broke up a fight between two of his younger brothers. I was scared shitless. His voice hit a tone I'd never heard up to that point, and have never heard since.
My middle school homeroom teacher was amazing. She was a science teacher and had a chameleon in a huge wall-sized cage. It was like 8 foot long, 3 deep, and 6 tall. It had branches for climbing, water, tunnels, just a complete perfect environment. One day before school started, she walked into her classroom while some kids were poking the chameleon with meter sticks, and she went to 11. I got why the hair floating trope is a thing that day, because she just physically radiated anger. She dragged them to the office. Then when she came back, she told us to hang out or play science hockey until first period while she went to cool down in the science office.
I fear the rage of quiet people because I don't have any reference on how they go mad. Edit, grammar.
Great guy, Ed the forklift driver. He tried Chantix to quit smoking. We worked in a warehouse with assembly lines packaging refrigerator components under Whirlpool/Maytag contracts. It was a pretty stressful job at times. One day we were packaging an order and we ran out of a shelf due to poor communication, so the assembly line had to stop. Ed absolutely snapped. He took off on his forklift to get the shelves. When he came back with the shelves on his left, he drove through the spider area where forklifts aren't allowed, slamming through thousands of components and running his forklift directly into the assembly conveyor belt, destroying the entire operation. Bodies went flying. He threw it in reverse and slammed backward into containers stacked all the way to the ceiling, causing hundreds of metal/glass fridge shelves to come raining down. It was terrifying, and he nearly killed 8 of us working on the line.
My mom and I had a fight about finances, life and everything when the financial crisis of 2008 started to affect us. We were shouting at each other every hurt and everything from birth till that day. Things started to fly. It was carnage. My sister grabbed my mom and pushed her to sit down next to me while scolding us about our behavior. Then she slapped both of us on the face, so we were totally stunned and shut up. Then she went on talking about how we as family should keep it together in dire times instead of fighting each other.
Worked with a guy at scout camp who was in charge of the archery range. Super quiet and reserved guy, very nice and down to earth. One day we had a scout draw his bow and point it at one of his friends as a joke. I've never seen a kid get the fear of God put in him so fast after my friend ripped him apart for that. Firearms are no joke.
My science teacher was normally a pretty cheery/funny guy. I remember one day half the class didn't do the homework, so he gave us a lecture on how we should work harder. He wasn't too angry, but was just a bit disappointed and talked in that generic strict upset teacher voice. For some reason, I looked up at him with a smirk on my face and said okay. He then decided to release all the pent-up anger in his life on me and screamed as loud as he could for the next 5 minutes straight. It's the angriest he's ever been, and he's known to not lose his temper and be level-headed most of the time.
Streamer I used to mod for absolutely lost her shit one day. She was genuinely one of the sweetest, most giving people I had come across. Always taking time to offer advice, never got cranky when her little sister would interrupt and take over stream. Genuinely wholesome to the core. Even when someone would be a troll or try to get a reaction out of her, she would just let it slide and one of us would send them to the underworld. A streamer who she had done a couple collabs with and would have been considered a friend called her a bitch in VC while on stream. She said, "Yeah, don't call me a bitch. That's not cool, bro." He replied with, "Whatever bitch," and she fucking lost her shit. Ripped this dude to shreds for a good couple minutes, then blocked him across the board. Apparently his chat was howling with laughter while he was trying and failing to justify himself.
I was the normally calm one. I was in first grade and this sixth grader would follow me and my friends after school and bully us, pulling our backpacks, mocking us, tripping us, throwing things at us, etc. One day, he's pulling on my backpack laughing and my friends are yelling at him and begging him to let go. According to a neighbor who saw the whole thing, my face went stony and emotionless for a moment, then I pulled my arms out of my backpack straps, turned around, and punched him square in the nose. His dad tried to get mad at my dad, but apparently the boy failed to mention that I was a first grader, so that was funny.
One time my 9th grade math teacher, who's normally super chill, had the class doing some cahoots and some kids were throwing books at each other, so dude walks over and tries to get them to stop and one of the kids throws a book at him and I guess that was the last straw or SMTH, cause he proceeded to pick up said book and fucking slam it against this kid's head, then yelled at everyone who was throwing books to get out the classroom, which was like half the class. He retired the next day and we didn't have an actual math teacher until about a month later, and even then it was pretty much just the football coach going over basic stuff, until we got the 12th grade math teacher 11 days before school ended. By the way, I won the Kahoot, laughing face.
Yes, me. I had a friend who I was heading out of town with for work. He suggested we spend the night at his mom's and sister's place because we had early flight and they were close to the airport. We were on the East Coast close to the ocean. Well, this family was fucking nuts. My friend had recently mudded some drywall for his mom and because of the humidity it took a long time to dry, but his mom kept yelling at him to paint it. His sister's kid, about 2 years old, was drinking coffee at midnight. The family only screamed at each other. The mom was just a wacko. Anyways, it was only about 3 hours I was able to keep my composure with them until I just fucking lost it. I screamed at everyone and retreated to the garden shed where my friend had built his own refuge. We eventually call a cab at about 4 a.m. to the airport, way earlier than our flights.
I once all but threw a full trash can at a parking garage attendant. I'm normally pretty quiet and my friends generally describe me as chill or laid back or whatever. But in my defense, they kinda got me hit by a car and were being real dicks about everything that day.